killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a
million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little silly.
Okay, listen up. It's like a big playground fight on TV. Greg Gutfeld, this super sarcastic guy who's like a walking energy drink, teamed up with Megyn Kelly, who's got super sharp comebacks like an ice queen. They didn't just tease Jimmy Kimmel, they totally roasted him on TV like he was a marshmallow at a campfire, with a side of, oh honey. Jimmy tried to fight back, but it was like throwing a soggy balloon in a storm. Total flop. This isn't just a TV argument, it's like a super fancy takedown that's got everyone chatting. Like last night, all the other late night hosts were super mad about it.
Case in point, last night, all the other late night hosts threw a hissy fit. It's too bad Tim Waltz is still grieving, or he could send them all a sack of industrial strength tampons.
All know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet.
Too bad Tim Walz is still sad, or he'd send them a big box of super strong tampons to deal with it. You know what they saw? We saw it too. They saw this old wobbly guy who needed help getting off a stage, but they're too scared to talk about it because they think he might still be the big Democratic pick and they don't want to mess him up. Maybe you let Barbara off the hook. Who cares what some singer thinks? But Jimmy Kimmel? He works for ABC, which has a huge news team, and he's always trashing President Trump. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? That's not a good excuse. You could still tweet something with your thumbs and set things straight, but you won't. Once upon a time, in the wild world of late night TV, Jimmy Kimmel was this goofy guy telling silly stories about celebrities and making dad jokes about tacos. But then, one day, he looked in his fancy Hollywood mirror and decided he was America's new hero of right and wrong. Yup, the party guy who used to do crazy stunts swapped his fun for a big serious desk. And it was as awkward as your uncle trying to tell jokes at a family party. That's when Greg jumped in, ready to shake things up like a kid flipping over a sandcastle. Picture this, the king of cable TV sass, owning the ratings like he's riding a bucking bronco, armed with sarcasm so sharp it could make a porcupine jealous. Poor Jimmy, it was a rough night for women, kids, and all the hardworking immigrants who mow his lawn. It was tough for healthcare and the planet too. Greg didn't just notice Jimmy turning all preachy, he brought out the big stuff. A megaphone, a whiteboard, maybe even a sparkly cannon. He showed everyone how Jimmy went from funny to giving boring Twitter speeches like some wannabe activist. While Jimmy was turning his jokes into snooze fests, Greg was breaking records as the cool rebel of late night TV. No fancy band, no fake claps, just super dry jokes that needed a warning label. Last night was the '96 Oscars, and while you might have missed it, there was one big winner. Not Oppenheimer, but the super preachy lefty folks acting like they're better than everyone. The top winner, Jimmy Kimmel, hosting the Oscars for the fourth time, with Hollywood stars cheering for the guy who wore blackface a bunch of times.
Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who cut his lawn.
It's a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare, for our climate.
Yup, the same stars who acted all shocked in 2018 when I said people used to put on dark makeup to copy famous black celebs, and it wasn't a huge deal back then. Totally loved Jimmy's act. This guy who did blackface skits like pretending to be basketball star Karl Malone, saying stuff like Karl Malone ain't seen no UFO, but if he did, it'd be spooky. Jimmy was all about acting super good, but Greg, he crashed through that act like a clown on a skateboard skateboard, flipping off everyone with every single ratings win. Then the roast got real. First, Greg figured out what was wrong. He called it trying too hard to seem good syndrome, something that hits old shock jocks who suddenly want to act all saintly after a few awards. Signs, lecturing viewers between lame jokes and fake crying while pretending it's comedy. For everyone who didn't vote for him, it was a bad night, and for those who did too, but they don't know it yet. Music on laughter. Greg said, "If I ever cry on TV, it'll be 'cause Maroon 5 dropped a new song, and that's it." Then came the fix: non-stop teasing. Greg went after Jimmy's new serious side like a kid with a water gun at a picnic. No holding back. The guy who used to make fake twerk videos for YouTube was now giving life advice like a cashier who just read a news headline.
The Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface loving Kimmel. They at the same time fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on The Bachelorette for saying, "Gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it." And all he said was, "Are we judging her by today's standards, or are we judging her by, old standards?" Whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past without ever acknowledging.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. Yeah, big. Now.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel. For the fourth time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man who wore blackface so many times. Yes, some of the very same celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities, and it wasn't a big deal. Absolutely ate up the performance by Hollywood darling Mr. Kimmel, whose blackface costumes included his oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone.
Karl Malone never seen no flying saucer himself, but if he do, that's gonna be a spook.
And if you're wondering if Greg had proof, he brought a whole backpack full. Ratings, old sketches, clips from The Man Show that went bad like old lunch meat. Greg didn't just poke at Jimmy's comedy, he took it apart like a science project frog. A guy who used to be hilarious was now stuck reading jokes that sounded like they came from a boring meeting, not a comedy club. Just 2 weeks ago at the Kennedy Center Honors, Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick's name right. He kept saying Diane and thought Barry Gibb was Billy. Guess who else got honored? Billy Crystal. And guess who opened the Oscars in blackface once? Billy Crystal. And who's hosting the Oscars this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Guess who wore blackface a bunch and did a fake city accent pretending to be Oprah darning socks? Jimmy Kimmel. But here's where it gets awesome. While Greg was throwing sarcasm like a pro, Megyn Kelly rolled in like a superhero with a coffee mug, tearing down reputations like they were flimsy paper dolls. While Greg was slicing up Jimmy's pride with his comedy chainsaw, Megyn put on her gloves, grabbed a sharp comeback, and cut through every fake part of Jimmy's image. She didn't yell or even blink. She just pulled out proof and sorted it under Jimmy's bad jokes that went sour like old milk. Remember The Man Show? That wild show with bikini contests and beer guzzling that Jimmy hosted with Adam Carolla? Yup, that one. It was like a big bro party sponsored by stinky body spray and run by loud dudes. But somehow, Jimmy turned himself into Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, scolding everyone from his fancy TV throne. Megyn Kelly, the queen of zingers, didn't just call it out. She ripped it apart like a kid with wrapping paper. She reminded everyone this is the guy who thought it was funny to have women bounce on trampolines for claps. And now he's trying to cancel people for old tweets from 2009. The irony could light up a whole town. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel came back after a summer break saying, if you're not vaccinated, you don't deserve a hospital bed. But was he serious? He wasn't crying, so maybe not. Anyway, it's funny hearing someone say "I see you" when nobody's watching his show. I don't want to say Jimmy's show is boring, but last night people in the audience were flipping channels during his taping. Megyn wasn't done though. She went right for the big one, Jimmy's blackface sketch. Yup, the internet remembers everything.
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, "I see you," who nobody actually sees. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
Even if Jimmy wants us to forget, he dressed up as NBA player Karl Malone in full blackface and thought it was hilarious. They put it on TV like it was no big deal. Now, that clip could start a huge fight. Megyn didn't need to shout. She just showed the proof and let it speak for itself. It was like a bro party sponsored by Stinky Spray and run by wild guys, but somehow Jimmy decided he's America's good guy, pointing fingers from his cushy throne. Megyn, with her super sharp comebacks, didn't just point out the switch. She chopped it up like a chef with a carrot. On a Sunday show with Stephanopoulos and the Oscars with Kimmel, ABC keeps pushing the blackface-loving Jimmy while firing Chris Harrison from The Bachelor for saying, "Hey, are we being too hard on this contestant for going to an old-timey party a few years back?" Chris was just asking if we're judging her by today's rules or back then's, and he got canned. Why? Because he's not out there bashing Republicans like Jimmy does. So ABC's acting like they're super with it while ignoring their own messy past. Megyn made sure everyone remembered Jimmy's the guy who laughed at women bouncing on trampolines for cheers, and now he's canceling folks for 2009 tweets. The irony could light up a street, but Megyn kept going. She hit Jimmy's blackface sketch hard. The internet's got it forever, even if Jimmy wants us all to forget. He went full blackface as Karl Malone, thinking it was comedy gold. They aired it on TV like it was nothing. Now, that could cause a big fuss. Megyn didn't rant. She just showed the proof and let it scream. He was America's silly uncle, Megyn said, and now he's acting like the country's good guy.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah.
That line hit like a dodgeball to the face. And the best part? She said it super calm, like she's reading your lunch order, but it stung bad. Then came the big switch. Jimmy went from fart joke guy who wore blackface to America's truth teller, fighting fake news. The guy who used to laugh at stereotypes is now preaching about right and wrong like his past got erased. Jimmy's career peaked with girls bouncing on trampolines. Now the only goof is him. He used to co-host The Man Show, but now he's crying like he just watched a super sad movie. Instead of being a permanent oops on the internet, Megyn cut through his new "I'm so good" vibe like a kid slicing Play-Doh. She mocked his try to fact check everyone, acting like the smartest guy in late night, but he's never even checked himself, like a broken bike yelling "go left" while crashing. Jimmy wants to fact check the world, but skips his own mirror. Megyn didn't just hit hard, she hit smart, breaking down Jimmy's fake high ground like it was a wobbly card table, all shiny but shaky and missing a leg. She didn't just poke holes, she turned it into a colander and sent it back with a note saying, "Nope." When your whole "I'm good" act is built on old mistakes and picky outrage, one person calmly showing your past can make it all fall apart.
Jimmy's career peaked with busty girls on trampolines. Now the only boob we see is him. He once co-hosted The Man Show. Now he's sobbing like he just watched Steel Magnolias 3 days into his menstrual cycle.
Megyn didn't just point it out, she marked it in bright red and stuck it on late night TV's forehead. Remember Megyn, that tough blonde who's not invited to fancy lunches in Manhattan just for having her own ideas. She wasn't loud, but she was deadly. Where Greg laughed at Jimmy's comedy fail, Megyn listed his mistakes like a teacher grading a bad test, one by one, cool and calm with the charm of a math quiz. Sketch by sketch, every rude joke Jimmy tried to hide popped up like a bad grade. Late night bits that would have shocked your grandma are now conveniently forgotten in Jimmy's big rebrand. Now, I'll tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. Only 366,000 people watch it, down from over 2 million when Jon Stewart was there. Seth Meyers, super boring with 778,000 viewers. That's awful for free TV you just turn on. Greg Gutfeld on cable you pay for has way more than double Seth's numbers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million viewers, also pretty bad. Megyn didn't need a laugh track, she brought hard facts, and the worst part, she was right. There's something cool about watching a guy who used to make fun of pop stars now trying to be their moral leader. Megyn said Jimmy traded realness for claps. The fake kind from audiences who came for jokes but got talks about saving the planet instead. While Greg was lighting up the stage with funny fireworks, Megyn was laying down the law. She turned Jimmy's career into a big gotcha moment for Hollywood's short memory. Remember when he painted his face and called it cool? Remember those rude jokes he told for ratings? Oh right, we're not supposed to talk about that, but Megyn did. She wrapped it in words so sharp they could cut through a juice box. She showed how Jimmy's "I'm so good" act was like a fake pony from a TV prop room. The guy who used to make fun of people on camera is now fake crying about being nice. This wasn't just a roast, it was a big reveal with laughs. Then came the big clash. Greg, still tossing sarcasm like it's confetti at a kid's party, threw another zinger. How does a guy lose his funny so fast? He's like a political bumper sticker in tight pants. Megyn just nodded and pulled out another old clip from Jimmy's Oops collection. These guys are super upset, and it's not just them. News people are giving tips to handle their sadness, anger, even fear. I get it. It's normal to feel bad after losing something. I'm still mad about losing world's sexiest man to Johnny Depp, but why fear? Maybe because their only news tells them Trump's gonna turn America into a scary place. But who was really scared during Biden's time? People riding the subway or buying food. Just when you thought late night couldn't get more preachy, in comes Jimmy with another shaky speech that sounds like a diary entry from a power outage.
Million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little silly.
These fellas are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing world's sexiest man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway or have to buy groceries.
Enter Greg Gutfeld, Fox's sarcasm king, with a mic and enough sass to clean a whole room. Greg didn't just call out Jimmy's new therapy hour for sad news fans. He tore it apart like a kid ripping open a piñata. Greg said Jimmy's switch from funny guy to emotional newsreader isn't growth. It's a weird change. This isn't comedy. It's nervous talking dressed up as jokes. 1 minute Jimmy's poking fun at Trump. The next he's about to cry into a fancy pillow while reading polls. It's a boring talk with jokes nobody wanted. Greg, always spitting real talk, cut through the fakeness like a knife through pudding. If you need claps after every joke to prove you're not freaking out, it's not comedy. It's therapy for people who love feeling woke. Translation: Jimmy's laugh track got swapped for claps from an audience so eager to feel smart they'd cheer a weather report if it trashed Republicans. Greg didn't just roast Jimmy's show, he burned the whole idea down. Watching Jimmy now, he says, is like watching your school counselor try comedy. Awkward, sweaty, and begging you to care about the planet while messing up a Republican joke. And real talk, when Greg starts sounding like the smart one in comedy, you know Hollywood's lost it, probably right after they okayed another season of Jimmy's teary talks and fancy shirts. Jimmy wasn't punching up, he was swinging sideways, always playing it safe, nodding to the crowd. The guy who used to mock Hollywood is Hollywood now, with fake guilt, teary speeches, and car ads stuffed in between. That's why Greg and Megyn's takedown was so wild. They weren't just teasing a guy. guy. They were calling out a fake switch, begging to be laughed at. Greg kept the sarcasm pouring like juice at a kid's party. Megyn dropped truth bombs with the calm of a ninja. And Jimmy, he kept talking to his own mirror, ignoring the stuff he didn't want to see. No joke needed. When two TV pros burn your whole comedy cred without even trying hard, the joke's not just on you, it is you.